Welcome back to Retro Wednesday at the Tidarium Hangar. This is Mike, and today I'm going to come at you with a different type of video. This is going to be 10 LJN toy lines. Not every toy line they made, but I think the 10 most impactful. If there's something that's not on the list and you still like it, or just noticed it's not on the list, please leave it in the comments below, and also let me know which one you think is your favorite. But this is going to be a series of videos I'm going to make for smaller toy companies, not the Hasbros or the Mattels, but the LJNs, and we're going to get into looking at these coming up. Alright, number 10 on the list is going to be Tiger Sharks. Now, I have them in some sort of an order, but it's not really worst to best. But these are probably the least popular because of the fact most people didn't know about them. I didn't know about them until just a few years ago. But they're really hard to track down. They're very expensive on the secondary market. They're not really bad toys, but they do have interesting accessories, and they had a whole lot of stuff planned for this line. Now, these figures are mostly desirable because of the value, but also because they're closely related to Thundercats. So we are probably going to talk about that toy line, maybe? Is it possible? But with it, there were only about 8 figures that were made. No vehicles or any of that kind of stuff. But they had some of that stuff planned for the future. Really would have been nice if they would have continued this line. And that's why I like companies like Super 7 that could come out. I do like Super 7. They plan to make this, so I don't have to spend $8,000 on those figures. I could just wait for Super 7 to make them, their representation, the toy versions and all that. But anyhow, they did have some really cool ideas planned for the future that never came out because the toy line failed for the most part, and that's why they're hard to get, but they are kind of cool. I have a few of them. One toy line that was a smashing success for them on the number 9 on the list, and it's number 9 because I don't really know a whole lot about it. I don't know much about the wrestling world, but this is a big market. It is a huge market. I did have a handful of these figures. I got them in a lot when I was buying someone's collection, and I sold them off relatively quickly because I wasn't really interested in them, but they are a little bit kind of bendy. I guess that's the cool part about these figures. There's no articulation at all whatsoever, but you can get some interesting stuff, some environment for a wrestler. You need the ring. They had wrestling rings, they had cage, match, accessories, all kinds of stuff that you would expect to see with a wrestling toy line from the 80s, and I do have a Hulk Hogan from the 80s, but I think Remco made it. It's not from this line. My Hulk Hogan looks like a He-Man figure. But this is still pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. And I do know that I watch a lot of videos from other people's collections, and they have a ton of this stuff in their collection. So people who like wrestling like LJNs, wrestling superstars. So in addition to Matchbox, making a Voltron, and Panache Place with their fleshed out toy line for the most part, well, we did see LJN make these motorized ones here. Now, this actually doesn't say LJN on the packaging. I'm going to switch to a graphic that does have LJN on the packaging, but I really think the flagship product of theirs for Voltron was the Lion Bots and the motorized Lion Force. The thing about this was you could pull them back and they would roll, and so it gave them some sort of a action feature, and that was something big with LJN. They had action features in them. They had Battle-Matic in a lot of their figures, and this was the motorized one. Now this was about, I think, 7-inch, 5 to 7 inches tall. I got one, but I guess I should go measure it. It was okay, and you did get quite a bit out of this because of the fact that you did have the rolling feature. You do have the combining feature. He's got a sword, but he is kind of small. In my mind, should have been bigger. They really should not have gone this small with it. But there's Voltrons in all different sizes and scales, and I'm pretty sure that Panache Place and Matchbox had those bigger scales locked up. They made some vehicle Voltron stuff with motorized bump action. This thing here just looks like it auto transforms, and you think, man, I really want something that auto transforms, until you get something like this that auto transforms. And the vehicle Voltron, they call it the Vehicle Team Assembler. This one is kind of fun, but tracking down the pieces to make it 100% complete nowadays is a pain in the butt. But I think it does scale very well with their motorized one. Look, You could get it for $1.98. Next up, we have the ET toy line. They did get the license for ET, made a ton of toys, a lot of real small figures in these packages, and you can still find these pretty cheap on eBay today, sealed in the package. And with that, ET was very popular. I think everybody knows about ET. Everybody has a small soft spot for ET. I think the best ET is the one that is, I think, about 4 or 5 inches tall, has articulation in the elbows and the shoulders, and the head has a sliding gimmick on the back to slide up and down. It just feels like a real ET action figure. There were a whole lot of other ET versions that they made. I can't really go through all of them in here, and I don't even know which ones all they made. But ET was one of the more profitable toy lines. They made so many products for it. A lot of fun. ET, LJN, one of their top lines. Then LJN made their own version of Stompers. They called them Rough Riders, but they were bigger than Stompers. They had lights and, well, basically the same gimmick where they just roll. But they also incorporated the whole Stomper Rough Rider technology into another toy line we're about to talk about. But these are premium feeling versions of Stompers. Now, I only had Stompers as a kid, but I probably had some Rough Riders not knowing that they were Stompers, or they weren't Stompers and they were Rough Riders. But Stompers were all the rage. And Rough Riders, same thing. I think they had a bigger following in Europe than in the US, but still, they had some really cool vehicles. The Dukes of Hazzard and the Magnum PI ones are pretty popular. People go after those pretty hard, pretty heavy, and it's pretty interesting that they have a gear shift on top. And as the fact I have none of these, I'm not really sure why there's a gear shift up there. But anyway, Rough Riders, LJN, one of their interesting toy lines. So I haven't really been saying the numbers. I have them numbered, but I haven't been saying the numbers. But number 5, Dune. On the planet of Arrakis, we see 6 action figures for the Dune line, which, when I start looking at it, they made a lot for Dune. For Dune being as small of a blip on the radar from the 80s as it was, but it was still really an interesting toy line. I had fun collecting this. I did actually do a full-on review of the entire toy line on my channel, but you gotta admit, they put a lot into it. This card back shows everything they made except for the sandworm, which is covered up, but we all know about the sandworm anyway. This is a pretty fun toy line overall. Eventually, I'm going to do a video showcasing those 3 Stomper type or Rough Rider type of vehicles they made for it. Kind of interesting how they went about doing that. It's pretty cool. It's kind of fun. But they also made this giant Spice Scout. They have role-play weapons, 2 of them. But this toy line, a little bit challenging to get all the parts and pieces, but not hard to collect all the figures and all this stuff in this picture. Number 4 on the list is their foray into the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom line. And with this, it could have been more ambitious than it was. This introduced the Battlematic action where you press the lever on their back and it moves their arm. Well, I don't know if this introduced it, but I know it has it. And I know that other toy lines have it also. But they only made 3 figures, the Thuggy, Mola Ram, and Indiana Jones. And with those 3 figures, they were scaled to closer to 6 inch than 3.75. They didn't match up to the counterparts for your Kenner, so you really didn't have a cohesive toy collection. I kind of think they did this for one reason or another. Were they future-proofing their Indiana Jones toy line? Did they have a designer that was a time traveler and went to the future into 2023 and said, yep, they need to be 6 inches to future-proof themselves? Or did they just doom the fate of this toy line of Temple of Doom by making them too big? They were supposed to get a short round and is it Willie? Is it Willie? Willie Scott? Something like that. Anyway, what a ugly female figure they made there. Short round looks pretty close. And I know somebody out there makes a custom short round. Why not a custom Willie? That would be cool too. But anyhow, this toy line was short-lived. They could have done so much with it. They chose not to, probably because Kenner's toy line failed. Next up is Bionic 6, number 3 on my list, and there's really no order. I'm just numbering them for no reason. The Bennett family and the Scarabs, evil minions of destruction. I absolutely love Bionic 6. They made 13 figures. They made 2 of the laser thrones. Now, the Scarab one was used frequently in the show. The Arrow chair was not used as much, but the Quad Runner's cool, and the Mule's van is very interesting. It's one of those things that it's not as functional as it is cool looking. And then, I don't have pictures of the dirt bike, but the coolest thing, well, maybe, is the playset. Now, maybe it's one of those things that is just really rare and hard to get your hands on, but I bought a sealed one for real cheap, and I could never find a loose one as cheap as my sealed one. So eventually when I found one, I paid too much for it. But it is a little underwhelming, but it's still very impressive, the fact they even made a playset for this toy line, and the fact that it uses everything incorporated with the figures, and there's 2 different color variations of a lot of the parts. This is an interesting playset that has been done different than any other playset that I know of, but the secret headquarters is pretty cool. One day I'm going to have to revisit this toy line, do another video of the whole toy line all at once, and I have to say that these figures made of die-cast plastic, translucent plastic, and a little limited on the articulation for the time. They should have done a little bit better with that. I would love to see a modern iteration of these. Bionic 6 LJN, they did more than you'd expect. Number 2 on the list, LJN Dungeons & Dragons, and I have to admit that I only knew of a few of these characters just a couple years ago, and I went ahead and started collecting it a while back, and I realized that this is a huge toy line. There's 19 articulated characters or figures. Some of them are duplicates that are remade into shield shooters too. This is quite expansive because not only do you have these articulated figures that are really interesting and really cool, and they all have accessories, they all have some articulation for 1982 or 3, whenever they came out, but they also have some companion pieces. Now, I've reviewed everything on this channel, and I've shown every figure made on this channel, but with that, they have PVC figures, they have all the mounts, they have a Tiamat, they have a playset. So much going on in this toy line. It is phenomenal. And the cool thing is that the cheaper 2-packs of PVCs actually scale with the articulated figures properly. So you can make some cheap 2-pack figures that sort of fit in scale-wise, somewhat semi into your environment, and that was a smart move on their behalf. But as a collector these days, tracking all of it down can be a little bit frustrating and annoying, mostly because of shipping. But it is fun to collect, and it's a huge toy line. LJN Dungeons & Dragons. Number 1 on the list is LJN's Thundercats, and wow, that toy line blows my mind for a lot of reasons. First of all, they made way more stuff than I ever imagined they made, and a lot of the stuff was harder to get in the US. I didn't see it on the store pegs in the US. They were more in the European area, which makes it harder to track down some of these pieces and some of the figures and vehicles, but they made so much. Everything from these basic figures and later figures that are still hard to track down to more rare, crazy off-the-wall stuff that I had no idea they made until later on. But I have to say that this toy line is frustrating to collect because there is a large group of collectors out there for this. People try to say that there's not very many Thundercats collectors, but try to go up and get some of these later figures like a Humaira or one of those figures, a Jaga, in an auction, and you're going to be getting beat out. You're going to have to put up some serious dough to get these figures, which really shocked me. I thought they'd just be a really cheap toy line to collect. I actually quit collecting it 3 times because it was that hard to achieve. I still don't have the Tungosaurus, which is really an interesting type of figure slash play set that they made. And they made the Astral Moat Monster and some other stuff. But these kind of rare one-off kind of things make the toy line really interesting, mysterious, and sadly, almost impossible to complete. Now, I say that Thundercats is the #1 toy line for LJN. Probably ET, maybe #1 seller, but Thundercats is very recognizable. Magnum PI, they came out with 2 things for Magnum PI for the most part. They did have the car with a 3.75-inch figure, and that is really hard to get these days, so I probably won't ever find one. It's no big deal. But then they also had the Rough Rider figure and then this torture trail, whatever that is down here. But it seems to look like it's got a Rough Rider on it. And with that, Magnum PI. This is a lot of the stuff that was made for Magnum PI. The vast majority of it was made by LJN, and it is sought after to this day. So let me know what you think about these 10 toy lines from LJN. What other companies, small companies like Mego and Remco, would you like to see videos made? And what is your favorite toy line you saw today, or favorite toy line I did not talk about? Like and subscribe, and Tadira Hanger out.